Good morning, Talk Radio 990 WEEB. Welcome back to Mornings with Steve and Tim, the area's #1 morning program. And with us this morning is Congresswoman Renee Ellmers, who, of course, is the 2nd District U.S. Representative to the House of Representatives for our area. And, of course, this is the first time, I guess, Congresswoman, that we haven't had Howard Coble in here. You know, we got somebody a whole lot better looking than Howard. But Howard's always made himself available to us, and we appreciate you dropping by this morning and talking to us, too.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Good to meet you, and I hope that we will have a long and prosperous future together.
Oh, me too. Now let's talk about, the economy. The mainstream media tries to sidetrack everything on stuff may be important, but it's not as important as a job.
Right.
Because right now, when you really look at the true numbers, it's about 18% unemployment out there.
Absolutely. And for us as North Carolinians, what do we need the most? We need jobs. We need job creation. We need to do everything we can to help our job creators. And there again, the Democrats and the Obama administration are doing everything they can to take the focus off of that. Because he's had 4 years of failed policies. Everything that he has put in place has really been a failure, and it has not helped us. He told us that we would keep unemployment below 8%. Of course, it's been sustained above 8%, and as you've pointed out, it's actually much higher than that. We have less people working in the workforce today in the United States than when the president took office, and those are very significant bits of factual information that many people don't understand, because they see maybe the unemployment rate starting to come down a little bit, and they're thinking that is a good thing. Actually, it's just a reaction to the number of people who are not working right now and who have stopped looking for jobs.
And those that have fallen off the eligibility rates for the unemployment insurance, which, you keep giving a guy a check, you kind of take away his incentive to go out there and look for a job to begin with, or create one.
Absolutely. And, I heard that repeatedly from our job creators out there. People who have had jobs, people in my district and District 2, who have talked to me and said, I have jobs and I have had to make 20 phone calls before I've gotten someone to come in and even interview for the position. Most people are saying, I'm just living out that unemployment check. Of course, that's one of the things that we addressed in the payroll tax extension, the conference that I was a member of just back here in January, which we addressed cutting back the length of time you can be on unemployment, and the fact that you have to go out from day one and look for a job, and states have the rights to do drug testing and screening. That was a big issue, because if someone's received unemployment for numerous weeks, and then they go to get a job and they can't pass a drug test that business owner provides for them, that is a waste of taxpayer money.
We're talking with Congresswoman Renee Ellmers, who, of course, is the 2nd District Representative to the House in Washington. And, of course, one of the things you all probably got to be frustrated in the House is that my memory serves me right, you've passed 3 budgets, Paul Ryan's being the latest one, but it stops dead on the doorstep of Harry Reid. I mean, you do all the work, and he won't even let it be read on the floor of the Senate.
Absolutely. And, interestingly enough, the president put forward a budget as well, got 0 votes in the House of Representatives. Not even his own Democrats in the House of Representatives voted for his budget. No, but you are absolutely right. This is 3 years that we have had a budget, that we have come up with a budget in the House of Representatives, a very good, strong path into the future for progress, for prosperity, decreasing the amount of debt over time, and yet the Senate continues to not even put it's over 1,000 days now, of course, over 3 years. And it is up to us as North Carolinians to continue to put pressure on Harry Reid and the Senate to do so. Because what we need to do is have a budget moving forward. We will present our budget from the House. The Senate will present, or hopefully will put forward a budget in the Senate. And then we'll have to come to conference and iron out the differences. That's the way that our process is supposed to work. But when the Senate doesn't even come up with a budget and says, hey, we're just going to exist on the money that we have, that's why you see us having to do things like passing what are called continuing resolutions
Kicking
or
the can down the
CRs.
street.
Just kicking the can down the road, just trying to continue to fund the government. That's no way to operate. That's not the way our households operate. We have a budget at home. Our businesses have budgets. The federal government should be doing the same.
Now, the House does have one weapon. You control the purse strings. Why not shut it down and force the Senate to do something?
Well, the thing of it is we are the House of Representatives, and we did pass our budget. The Senate, being a separate house, and part, as our constitutional layout of the legislative branch of government, we can't force the Senate to do this. We talk about it every day. We are out there urging the Senate to do this every single day. That's, again, why it is so important for every American to be reaching out to the Senate and to Harry Reid and saying, we demand that you pass a budget this time. We just simply cannot stay on this path of unsustainability. When we're operating the federal government without a budget, that's where you see things like the famous stimulus package and Obamacare and all of these things that we can just tack on trillions and trillions of dollars onto the amount of debt that we're passing on to our children, because when you don't have a budget, you just have a blank checkbook.
Now, one thing also, the president is pretty much trying to, if you listen to his latest speech, trying to run against George Bush again instead of his record, because he says, do you want to return to the past? Well, I don't want to be where I am, I can tell you that, which is a lot worse than what the past is, but also this Buffett rule. Rule. Now, that's about the dumbest thing I've heard in a long time, because let's suppose the president got his Buffett rule passed. From the estimates I've heard, that would raise a total of $1.2 billion to $5 billion, depending on who you talk to. So let's go to the high end of $5 billion. That stacks up against this $1.233 trillion deficit for this year. That ain't going to put a slight dent in it.
It doesn't put a dent in it, and even the president himself has acknowledged that it doesn't do so. And his argument for why you would continue on a path of raising this tax would be for fairness. Fairness.
Yeah.
So basically, he continues on this path of politics, of envy, and division. For the president, this is what he has to do, because again, he cannot run on his policies. He cannot run on 4 years of success. Everything has been a failure. So he continues on this path of envy and division, breaking individuals into different segments. There again, looking at those who are the individuals who would have their taxes increased. It would be our job creators. What will that do? That does not bring more jobs. That decreases jobs. And historically, if you look back, if we're talking about what happens when this tax is increased, basically what you have is a decrease of revenue coming into the federal government. It's been shown over time. I mean, you cannot raise the capital gains tax and get more revenue into the federal government. It just doesn't happen. And but let's not let facts get in the way of our politics. And that's the way the president continues on this path. And we talk about raising capital gains tax, but what will happen if the president is reelected is we are also going to see our current tax rates go up, of course. We are also going to see the death tax go up, which will go from, I believe, 35% up to 55%. You're talking about multiple taxation on an individual and not being able to pass on to their children and grandchildren the prosperity that they achieved as they increased and went up on that ladder of success. We continue. I cannot even believe what we'll be paying in taxes. That's why one of our issues in the Republican conference, and we will be dealing with this very, very soon, when we go back to Washington next week, we're going to start discussing real tax reform, cutting taxes across the board. We're talking. We pay the highest corporate tax rate in the world now. Japan, just as of April 1st, just dropped theirs back. We're now number one. What does that mean? That means that businesses are again, our job creators, our corporations are leaving the country and have left the country because of excessive regulation and because of excessive taxation. We need to bring those businesses back. They want to be here in the United States. Why would you ever want to go anywhere else? We have the best of everything here. They're telling us we want to come back, and if you do certain things, we will be able to. We just have to turn this country around, and I see a huge opportunity for that with the 2012 election.
Well, one thing that we have to do as a nation is quit like you were talking about, dividing the nation between what's fair and do what's smart, and in creating business atmosphere so business will come back, will create jobs, and will thrive. That's smart because that creates taxpayers in the form of jobs.
Absolutely. And the whole issue here, we've got to get people back to work. We've got to get our business owners, our job creators, investing in their businesses again, rather than investing and having to adhere to excessive regulations. I mean, I cannot tell you the number of businesses that tell me every day, I am pouring money into paying someone to just make sure that I'm adhering to regulations. What I could be doing, if regulations are good. Let's face it, we want everyone practicing safely. We want a good, strong, healthy private sector. We want a good, healthy free market system where everybody wins. That's fine. What we have repeatedly from the federal government is excessive regulations that do nothing but cause our job creators to spend money. And they could be creating more jobs. They could be hiring. They could be investing. They could be, there again, building prosperity is what we're looking for. And we can do that. And, there again, you talked about the issue. The president keeps talking about fairness and a balanced approach. 50% of Americans in this country don't pay federal income tax. How can that be fair, number one? How can that be balanced? What we need is a broader system, a simpler system, one that makes sense. Our tax code right now makes absolutely no sense.
Some people have brought up the fair tax.
Mm-hmm.
All right, how do you feel about that?
The fair tax has definite good things in it that I like. I like the fair tax. I like things about the flat tax. I think the whole idea, I'm not locked into one or the other or any particular tax reform. I think we have to come together just there again with our goal of simplification and decreasing the amount of taxes that the Americans pay. Why, again, as you pointed out, if you get more people paying in, if you get jobs created in this country, you get more people paying into the federal tax system, that is going to decrease our debt. That is our number one issue that we're faced with right now. Over 42 cents of every dollar that we spend at the federal level comes from borrowed money from other countries. China is the largest holder of our debt. We have got to get out from underneath that. And of course, that leads me to the next issue of energy independence, which of course our president just stays committed to alternative energy sources and funding companies with subsidies such as Solyndra, which are failed businesses that have done nothing but waste good, hard-earned taxpayer money.
Another deception I heard about this morning is that, he says, I've instructed my administration to allow possible drilling on 75% of our lands, but he's only talking about 15% of the available land that the federal government could lease out. He's only opening up 15% of it, and only 75% of that 15%, unlike George Bush, who back in 2008 opened up both coasts. It brought the cost of oil down $15 in one day. This is how you bring down the price of oil.
There again, with the Obama administration, it's all about smoke and mirrors. And this is just another effort. He knows he is losing this fight. He knows that when people go to the gas pump and they're paying more for gas, he knows that is going to hurt him and that is going to continue on. So he'll throw these little bones, these little scraps out, from his table every now and then, but it never, ever amounts to anything.
And
what we need is a real serious energy policy.
And it doesn't take a genius. He wants to beat up on the big bad oil companies who only made 5.2% on their investment of $2 trillion, which is not a bad rate, is not an unfair rate of return to ask for. They make roughly 2 cents a gallon at the pump. But when he wants to take away the tax incentives that the IRS code allows, guess where if the cost of producing it goes up, guess where it ends up? At the pump.
We pay more, and of course here in North Carolina, we pay one of the highest state gas taxes in the country. So that's just going to increase to our burden. That's going to increase to every mom that goes to the pump to put gas in the car to get the kids to school and to soccer practice and ballet. That's just more money. And we just cannot continue on this path. But there again, the president talks about, decreasing the subsidies. That's fine. If we want to talk about decreasing the subsidies, let's talk about a broad sense here. But yet he continues to fortify the idea that we need to continue to subsidize companies such as Solyndra and others that we have absolutely no idea if what they're going to produce. I'm sorry, you can't put solar energy in your car and you can't put algae in your car right now, but you can put gas, and we need to bring those gas prices down. And if he continues on this path, we are just headed for economic. I can't even believe we're talking about $4.50 a gallon now by summer. That's outrageous for anyone's budget. And yet he continues on this path. There again, pointing the finger at the evil oil companies.
Yeah, wealth envy.
There again, once again, getting back to envy and division, politics of envy and division, and sticking it to the man.
Yeah, they always like to beat up the big guy. Well, the big guy is the one getting you to work. And another thing is that, by the way, we're speaking with Congresswoman Renee Ellmers, who of course is our representative from the 2nd District here and running for re-election. Another thing is that, of the 50 states, 48 of them are projected to have a budget shortfall this coming year. Only 2, Montana, North Dakota, are projected to have a budget surplus. And of course, that's coming from turning business loose, allowing it to work. Don't regulate it to death, keep it safe, but, allow them to go up there on private lands with private money and private equipment and drill, create jobs. I mean, even McDonald's is offering signing bonuses up there to encourage workers. I mean, this is what happens when you turn private industry loose. They can get things done and create jobs.
Absolutely. And that is exactly where we know the answers are. We know the answers are in the private sector, and with job creation, with a free market system, and where we need to do everything we can to be building that. And, there again, not only in the House of Representatives have we worked on all of these, whether we're talking about energy independence and policy and legislation that we've passed in the House of Representatives to bolster that, or whether we're talking about decreasing excessive regulations, or we're talking about tax code issues. We just passed the Jobs Act, which actually is now law because the Senate, because it was such a good piece of legislation, a number of good job creation pieces of legislation, the Senate voted on it, passed it, and now the president has signed it in. So we have been able to get certain things done, but there are many, many bills, 25, 30 bills sitting over in the Senate that we've passed in the House that Harry Reid will not bring up for a vote. And there again, that is something that we need our fellow North Carolinians to be reaching out to the Senate and calling and saying, you need to be voting on these issues. We were accused by Debbie Wasserman Schultz as Republicans the other day of us wanting the economy to stay in a bad situation. No, we are the ones who have done the work. We are the ones who have passed these bills to turn this economy around. We could do it today if any of these bills were
y'all have just got to change out the Kool-Aid in the Democratic waiting room, I tell you.
Yes. And that's why I feel so optimistic about the 2012 election. It is a choice of two futures. Either we are going to stay on this path, again, of envy and division and, dividing this country into different segments and groups. The president is there again, his war on women. I mean, that's just another area. Why has he continued on this path of using women to try to get votes? Well, in 2010, the votes from women went to the Republicans. And that's why they know they need this group. They need this group incredibly. So they have manufactured a situation where they're saying, look, your rights as a woman are going to be taken away from you unless you vote us back into office again. Look at all these wonderful things we've done. Well, I can't tell you how important it is for women to understand that the president has done everything he can in his power. Just with Obamacare alone, 85% of the women in this country make the health care decisions in our homes for our children, for ourselves, for our parents, with Medicare and getting them to the doctor. And yet, Obamacare is one of the worst pieces of legislation. It certainly doesn't do anything for health care. As a nurse, I understand that perfectly, and that's one of the reasons that I ran for office, was because I knew it was going to be devastating not only to our economy, but also to health care itself. So, here he's saying that as Republicans, we're wanting to take away rights from women, when in fact, the fact that we are in the economy we are in today has everything to do with working against women.
Well, speaking of backing up just a tad there to Obamacare, that we'll have to wait and see how the courts rule. Mm-hmm. I mean, nobody can predict, depending on who you listen to, it'll pass or it'll fail. But regardless, let's suppose it does fail. I mean, in other words, they overturn it and say that you can't have the mandate anymore, which will pretty much kill Obamacare, as you know, because that's the economic engine it has to have in order for the bill to survive.
Right.
We still have the problem of the cost of health care, obviously. What is the solution? I mean, I always advocate that, you know, when I look at the enrollments there at UNC, last year they allowed 97 new medical students in. Well, that's less than one per county for this state alone. We got to, you know, again, it boils back to supply and demand. Increase the supply and then the cost comes down. Is there a way to do that, or maybe you have a better solution?
Well, that's definitely one of the areas that we have concern about, because we have less and less you know, we need the best and the brightest going into medicine. And when we're limiting the number of students that can actually get into programs, that's an issue in itself. But when we're talking about healthcare, it's a two-pronged situation. We have the best healthcare in the world. We have had the best healthcare in the world. With that is because of the research and development that has gone on. It's highly technical. We're doing tests and we're doing treatments today, keeping people alive much longer. The life expectancy of an individual is so much higher than it was before.
Well, they're saying a kid born today can't expect to live to be 100.
It's very true, especially in that time frame. So, you know, but the problem is someone's got to pay for it. So we have the two issues. We have the cost of healthcare itself, and then we have the cost of healthcare insurance. And they're two completely separate issues, which, of course, the Obama administration has loved to try to meld the two together.
Right.
You know, for instance, let me just back up a step when we're talking about that. In the Ryan budget, and we've also passed in the House legislation to repeal the IPAB, or the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which was put in place by 15
unelected people.
15 unelected people making healthcare choices for Americans, not only with Medicare, but it expands out from there. We have basically given that right back again to the individuals. It's about choice. When we're talking about healthcare insurance, some of the things that we need to do, you need to be able to buy insurance across state borders. One of the reasons that healthcare insurance is as high as it is here in North Carolina is lack of competition. If you can buy insurance, you know, from California, sitting in front of your computer, choosing what you need, which is what your product will be, it's going to be a lot less expensive. To me, it's a win-win situation, because now you have insurance companies opening up the market across the country to individuals, and now you've increased, as a consumer, your choices of insurance companies to go to. So that just makes perfect sense. Healthcare savings accounts, you know, bolstering those, letting individuals make more choices there. You know, we got to reform Medicare, Social Security. Those are all issues as well that we're dealing with, which the other side wants to pretend is not an issue. It is an issue. And we have to deal with it, and we have to deal with it today. But at the same time, we can't jeopardize any of our seniors and what they're receiving, because they've paid into those for those benefits their entire lives, and they deserve to get it back. But, you know, there are just so many answers when we're talking about healthcare itself. Certain things like, you know, our physicians pay enormous amounts in malpractice insurance, which, you know, is driving physicians out of practice, essentially, depending on what specialty they're in. But also, they're practicing defensive medicine. They're doing more than they need to do to prove the diagnosis, basically, rather than just being able to just rely on their medical training and education that they've received over time. They're ordering tests that maybe they don't need to order, simply to cover themselves. That drives the cost up, and we continue to see this. If we have good, meaningful tort reform in place, which there again is something that we passed when we repealed IPAB as well, that's going to help. You know, there are estimates out there, you know, $50 billion of savings. And I believe it's much higher than that. We can and we will put in place the real reforms that we've always known. You know, there was the first vote we took in the House when I started with the 112th Congress, was to repeal Obamacare. We are still committed to that, regardless of what the Supreme Court decides. And I am optimistic. I do believe that they're going to come up with the right decision. Regardless, though, we are still committed to that and ready to put the reforms in place that we need to to change this whole dynamic. If there's a silver lining to Obamacare, it's the fact that now as a nation we're having this discussion, where before those of us in healthcare
putting it
knew,
off, yeah.
and we kept putting it off because it was too much of a political issue to deal with. We have to deal with it now, and we understand that.
Let me ask you a possible solution. I don't know whether this is or not, because you got a lot bigger or a lot more extensive health background than I have by a long shot. But you remember, I don't know if I'm older than you are, so you may not remember, but they used to have a thing called assigned risk. If you were such a bad driver driving, they throw you into a pool called assigned risk. And that meant you had minimum coverage and a high premium.
Mm-hmm.
But then they put it into a pool where all the insurance,
Mm-hmm.
if you were an assigned risk type driver, they put it in a big pool and all the insurance companies shared in it. Would that be a way to possibly get in pre-existing conditions into the system?
That is one of the things that we're talking about, a form of that, basically, where we're talking about lumping groups together like that. Because there again, we have the pre-existing conditions. We know that, and we know that that's an issue. There are many issues that we all agree need to be addressed in healthcare. That's one of them. I mean, everyone's health is different. But when you have a healthy individual who's young, should they be paying the same premium rate as someone who's older and maybe has a couple of healthcare issues? I'm not sure that, when we're talking about the issue of fairness, I'm not sure the fairness exists there. So we do need to come up with a different way. And of course, the insurance companies are doing the best job they can to cover everyone, especially, we've all seen our healthcare insurance premiums go up this year and over the last 2 years. Why? As a result of Obamacare. Because basically when you're saying that all pre-existing conditions have to be covered and they're just trying to lay out, what they're going to be spending.
Get a pool of money to cover it, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately that's been part of it. And, there again, it's a direct result. We know now from the Congressional Budget Office that Obamacare is going to cost twice as much as they said that it would cost. You can see the cost going up over time and why it is so important that we repeal the whole thing, not just pieces of it, the whole entire thing, and start all over with the real reforms.
Well, we're talking with Congresswoman Renee Ellmers, of course, the representative from the 2nd District here, which covers Moore County. And I know you got to scoot in just a minute, but before you do, of course, you're running for re-election, and I always want to afford everybody the opportunity to tell the voter why they should give you a second term in the Congress.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, when I ran in 2010, again, I'm a nurse. I wasn't one, to look at a political career. But when I saw my livelihood, when I saw my son's future basically being taken away from him by an economy that was going to be bad, I knew that I had to get into the race. My husband's a general surgeon. We own our practice. We're small business owners. Mm-hmm. So we're feeling this from many different positions. I basically ran on one, of course, repeal, replace Obamacare. I mean, get rid of it and put in the real reforms that we needed to. Good tax policy, energy independence, all of these things. Couple that with the fact that we've all felt that our country's being taken away from us, our Constitution, our freedoms, and our liberties. I am still running on those very same things. Now, we've been able to accomplish a lot in the House, but all of us feel we want more and we want it quicker. And the 2012 election, again, is going to be the choice of two futures. And I really believe that we can maintain and increase the majority in the House of Representatives. We need to win the majority in the Senate. And, of course, we need to win the presidency in order to turn this country around. I feel that I can be a very strong voice for North Carolina. National Journal. Actually, I'm in the top 15% of conservatives in the House of Representatives, and the number one in the House in the delegation for North Carolina, which of course my colleagues will dispute, but nevertheless, that's what the National Journal has said.
Or they'll distort.
But there again, taking into consideration every vote that I have taken, I'm a very conservative voice. I believe very strongly in the private sector. I believe we need to do everything we can to bolster the private sector and the free market in order to turn this economy in this country around, it's not going to come from any stimulus package in Washington. It's not going to come from any Washington bureaucrat. It's going to come from the private sector. We need to do everything we can to help our job creators. And I ask for everyone listening for their vote, because I want to go back there. I haven't finished the job. I've started it, and I feel that, again, I've been a very strong voice for North Carolina, and I want to continue that.
Well, Congresswoman Ellmers, I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us this morning, and we wish you the best in the upcoming election.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you.